Now it gives me great pleasure to not only introduce the current governor of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, but the next governor of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania as well, the Honorable Tom Corbett.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. RJ, thank you. Fred, Loman, David, thank you very much. Thank you for the warm welcome. I'm looking forward to hearing from our keynote speaker, but it is certainly a privilege for me to join with you here in this great gathering. Now I'm going to be able to see you if I do this, because these lights are really bright. I don't know if they can turn them down at all or not. It would be helpful. It is truly a special honor for me to be introduced by what I consider to be Pennsylvania's leading political commentator. He just was up here, a fine man, a champion of freedom, and also my role model for losing weight, R.J. Harris. Would you give R.J. a round? And if you think I'm kidding, he suggested that a few months ago, about 8 months ago, and I took him up on it. As you know, we're here in what is truly a very crucial time. Just 7 months from today, date-wise, from a defining election for this country, across the country, but particularly for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And as you have, conservatives have always had good ideas for economic growth, for job creation, and for limited government. You might recall that last time I ran, I talked about fiscal discipline, limited government, and free enterprise. And that's exactly what we're delivering now. This time, in the state of Pennsylvania today, we have more than just ideas to offer voters as a result of the last 3 years. We have accomplishments that we can offer, a record that we can build on, and a state that I believe is on the move again, and that's why we are going to win on the 4th of November. In spite of what we came up against when we entered a $4.2 billion deficit, we have balanced the budget. We have kept taxes down. In fact, we have reduced taxes here in Pennsylvania. We've shaken off the recession, and we're putting people back to work all across Pennsylvania. And that's just in 3 years. Can you imagine what we can do with your help in 8 years? If we have that opportunity, actually, I should say when we have that opportunity, we will set an example of what conservative economic leadership can do throughout the entire country. Pennsylvania is coming back. It's because we made the right choices. Not necessarily the easy choices. In fact, many of those choices were very tough. The first decision, as you know, that I made as governor was to face the problems of the Commonwealth squarely and honestly. No more putting off the tough decisions and kicking the can down the road as we had seen for so long before. No more kicking that can down the road to make the fiscal problems worse. And we've seen enough of that in Harrisburg, and as we all know, we've seen a lot of it in Washington, D.C. I promised a different way when I ran 4 years ago. I meant what I said, and I've done what I said. We have done it. We have kept our promise. You know, I have a great partner. My number one partner is my wife, Susan. We've been together now, married for 41 years, dating for almost 45 years. Thank you. But I have a new partner. No, I'm not cheating on my wife. I have a new partner in my Lieutenant Governor, Jim Cawley, and he's a great Lieutenant Governor. And when he and I took office in January of 2011, this state was looking at that deficit of $4.2 billion. President Obama and the Democrats in Washington have been known to borrow that much in a couple days. We thought that was a lot of money to have to make up, and I think you agree with me on that. We've made up that difference, and there were basically two ways in which we could make the decision. How do you make up $4.2 billion? Now, the method that's been preferred for a lot of years was just to turn to the taxpayers and say, you have to pay more. And if you're listening to the television commercials lately, you can read between the lines. you have to pay more. To that mindset, whenever a budget is out of balance, the way to balance it is to go to the people and say, you have to pay more. If the state has a deep deficit, well, you have to pay more. What else could it be? We pointed out to them that no, actually, we didn't have a revenue problem. We had a spending problem in Pennsylvania. And the right and fair thing to do was to bring fiscal discipline to state government, and that's exactly what we have done. The Harrisburg establishment is still complaining. And in fact, many of the public sector unions are still complaining across Pennsylvania, and you see it in their commercials. They've had a lot to complain about these past 3 years because what we have been doing is the right thing for Pennsylvania, but maybe they don't necessarily see it as the right thing. I think it's a good sign. With the spending increases that they would have wanted, Pennsylvanians would have been paying higher taxes, whether they were individuals, families, or businesses. My view was that in a bad economy, the tax increase was absolutely the worst thing you could possibly do, and the last thing our people needed, and the last thing our economy needed. As your governor, I did make the hard calls, as I promised I would, just as families have to do. You know, you probably sit down there at the kitchen table, or maybe in a den, or maybe at a dining room table, and you try and figure out what do we have to have, what money do we have, and where do we get the revenue. Well, I believe one of the best things you can do in that regard is to make smaller government. And as you probably know, and maybe you don't, that right now, after our first budget, we reduced the size of state government under the governor's office to the smallest size in 50 years. In our first budget, it was the first time the budget of Pennsylvania went backwards, reduced by almost $2 billion. Why? Because we didn't have the money. In 40 years. 40 years it had been since we reduced the budget of Pennsylvania. We went after the state's biggest problems one by one, putting what we all know are to be conservative principles into action. And when it came to the public schools, where there was a problem with the vanishing federal stimulus money, remember that? Shovel-ready money going to the schools for salaries. The state has spent that money when I walked in the door. By the time I took office and my first budget in July 2011 came into place, it was not there. We took a tough problem, but we said we're not going to tax the people of Pennsylvania to fix it. We went to work, we got creative, we worked with educators, we worked with administrators, and we worked with parents. We're increasing the accountability and to implement school performance over the last 3 years. And we now have school performance standards that, by the way, if you care to look on our website at pa.gov and go to the education department, you can see what the school performance is of every school building in Pennsylvania. You can now measure it. Please go look at it. It's not about how much money you spend. That's what I hear a lot on the other side. We need to spend more. We need to spend more. How about we invest money? How about we look to see how we're investing our money? And let's see the return on that investment. Today, through the hard work of a lot of people, including all of you here in this room, the state of Pennsylvania invests more in education than ever before, and we're going to get a better return on that investment. We have work to do ahead of us. I think you all agree with me, but we're going to get that. We've got the teachers. We actually have, we do have very good teachers in Pennsylvania. We've got the talent to have the finest schools in America and to prepare Pennsylvania students for a successful future. That's my goal. I hope that's your goal also, isn't it? You know, I believe that we need to be preparing our next generation. Not just looking at a 2 or 4 or 6 year cycle when it comes to the tough decisions, but we need to be making the decisions for the long term, for the next generation. I think that's what you did 25 years ago, Fred, when you established this event. You were looking at the long term, and it doesn't get fixed overnight. And that's exactly what we're trying to do now. We need to prepare the next generation for the jobs of this next generation, for the jobs of the 21st century, not what we've been doing and still teaching them for the jobs of the 20th century. And we need to bring jobs to Pennsylvania. And the students who have left Pennsylvania, we need to bring home to Pennsylvania. Please come home. We know what the jobs will look like because they're coming already. Whether it's manufacturing or high technology, life sciences across Pennsylvania, or biotech, or just about anything else, we don't give an inch to any other state. We can rank with any other state. We also found, though, there were too many bureaucratic rules when we got into office that were chasing businesses and investors away. So what do? We went in and started reforming those rules with suggestions that many of you have brought to us. We've worked with the chambers. We've worked with NFIB. We've worked with the Commonwealth Foundation to make the changes that are necessary to make Pennsylvania someplace that business wants to start and grow and come from other states and other nations to come to the United States. Give you an example. Remember I told you, a sign on the side of the bus, less taxes, more jobs. Less taxes, more jobs. Well, one of the worst taxes we have is the inheritance tax. And so far, we've been able to eliminate the inheritance tax on the family farm and the small business. So we could not have done that without you. And what is happening? We are competitive again here in Pennsylvania. Just last month, it was reported that for growth of corporate headquarters within a state or new corporations headquartering in a state, in the Northeast, Pennsylvania is number one. Number one. The 8 other states combined do not equal what we have done in 2013. And for the year across the country, 2013, we're number 4. And guess what we're aiming for? Number 1. What we're doing is trying to create that environment. That if you want to turn a good idea into a great business, if you want to create, if you want to build, hire the best people and come here to Pennsylvania because we have a place here for you. And we're seeing the companies come. The best thing about Pennsylvania's comeback, it's reaching clearly far and wide. It's reviving small towns across the state of Pennsylvania. I urge you, if you haven't been along the northern tier to the towns that have been almost abandoned before, or to southwestern Pennsylvania, or into the coal country, you're seeing towns that are coming back. They're growing. And of course, one of the big reasons for that is one thing, natural gas. We cannot forget that shale boom is a long-term, economically sustainable effort here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. But it was not an inevitable project. It didn't happen by chance. It happened by choice. Maybe you remember how some of our friends on the other side of the aisle viewed Pennsylvania shale gas a few years ago, and if you listen to them now on TV, continue to view it. Here was a big chance for our state to once again become a leader in energy production. We're talking about a lot of capital investment, a lot of new jobs, and everything else comes with a thriving local industry. Yet when it came to energy, all you could hear was, we need to tax it. We need to tax it more. The way I see it, that's no way to seize an opportunity. And I would remind them, they already pay a lot of taxes, just like you and I. If you want an industry to grow and come in here, you don't target that industry with a special tax. You treat them like everybody else. It doesn't exactly make the right first impression when you're trying to attract tens and tens of thousands of jobs, particularly through the gas industry, to say, oh, but thank you for the jobs, but we're going to tax you more because you're rich. So the approach we took was to welcome that energy, welcome those producers, and welcome those new jobs to Pennsylvania. And the new jobs are coming. Look where they are today. This single industry today supports, either directly or indirectly or induced, more than 200,000 jobs in Pennsylvania. As you know, what you've seen across this country, and we are leading this country, the United States is now the largest producer of natural gas in the world, and we are the #2 natural gas producer in the United States in 5 years. And based upon the events going on in Europe, you can see where that's going to have a direct effect, along with what's going on in the Balkans, with oil and what's going on across this country and the geopolitics of the world. All of this is part of the record that I will submit to the voters with your help here in a few months. Actually, we're submitting it now. I hope that they will honor me with the second term, even if I haven't always managed to be the most popular guy out there. As you hear from me in the commercial, I was not sent by you to Harrisburg to make friends. I was sent by you to make a difference. And one thing's for sure, the record doesn't look any better, never looked any better than it does right now when you compare it to the alternative. I guess you could say the four alternatives that you hear out there on the radio waves and on the TV. The other side, the opponents, are going to choose their candidate sometime next month. It's a crowded field. Well, it was a crowded field. Now it's getting a little less crowded, right, RJ? Okay, it's thinning out a little bit. But they have a lot of things in common. And I will tell you one thing. Besides wanting to tax and spend, one of those is overconfidence. I like hearing their confident predictions of victory because it reminds me so much of some other campaigns I've run in 2004 and 2008 and 2010 when all the pundits said I couldn't win. If you think Pennsylvania is ready for that sudden turn to the left in the primary next month, they're going to have a real dilemma. It's the Democratic establishment's idea of variety. From a long list, you get to choose your favorite liberal. Every one of these candidates is right in line with the Democrats in Washington, led by the present resident of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. When it comes to an all-out federal takeover of health care or higher taxes or more spending and regulation, every one of those four candidates are true believers. In my time now as governor, we have made a clear break from the old policies that raised taxes, ran up debt, and ran business out of town. The other side want to bring it all back again. This is what we need to do. We need to tell them, with your help, in November, on November the 4th, not a chance. Why on earth would we want to go back to the same policies that brought on so many of our economic troubles in the first place? It took 3 years for the state, for us to make up the ground that was lost during that recession. Now that we have recovered our economic strength, now that we're growing, now that we're competing and gaining new ground, why would we ever go back to the old ways? Holding on to the same policies that brought us through the tough times, and how much better can we achieve in the future if we continue the course that we're on? How many more jobs can Pennsylvania create? How many more businesses right here, people who work right here with new businesses, can succeed and prosper here? Now, how many more families can find better lives by moving here or staying here in Pennsylvania? And all across this great Commonwealth, we're going to see the answer in the next 4 years if we press on and continue on our track. That's a choice that we have for the voters to make. Whichever opponent they send to my way in a general election, we'll be ready. I'll make my case, I'll run on the issues, and I'll give them the best race they've ever seen. I know as well that I have good allies right here. Fred and Dave and Loman, appreciate the support that you and everybody in this room has given us over the years, starting in 2004 to now. We're going to make our case to the people of Pennsylvania. We're going to win on November the 4th of 2014. Thank you.